viewers. So I've had a specific request to do a video on feints, and specifically how to feint with a broadsword in order to, I'm going to say, clear up some confusion caused by information on the internet. Okay, so here it is.
First of all, a bit of terminology. The earliest British manuals don't actually talk about feints, they talk about falses or false play. Now, false play is fundamentally different to the feint as it is understood in classical fencing. So if I could get Dan to step forward. So, if you ask a classical fencer, what happens if you start a feint and your opponent doesn't respond, the answer is you hit them. So most typically, I extend my sword with a thrust. If my opponent reacts, I then complete my feint, but if he doesn't react, I continue through and I kill him. And that is a typical feint as it is understood in classical fencing. The British false play is fundamentally different. False play is a fake attack. It's never designed to hit your opponent. You won't hit your opponent. And if they don't respond, or don't respond in the way that you expect them to, you'll probably look a little bit silly. But you're certainly not going to hit them. Now, some later British manuals make this distinction explicit, because they've been taught by a classical fencer, no, there is a difference between a feint and a false. Others just use the word feint, and when they use the word feint, they use it in the sense of the false, okay, as a feint, as a fake attack, okay? And honestly, that's more the way most people actually use feints, and it's more the way the word is used generically. You know, a feint is a fake attack, okay? But just so it's clear, there is a slight difference. Now, because a feint, and I will just use the word feint from now on, okay? Now, because it's a fake attack, there are certain rules that I need to follow. So, first of all, is I need to convince my opponent to respond to it, okay? There's various things I can do there. I can, for instance, lean towards the bit that I want him to defend. I can look at it, I'm going to feint at his foot, I'll look at his foot to gain his attention towards it, okay? So there's, some manuals also recommend making an appel with your foot as you make your feint. Others, such as Hope, say, well, that's all very well on the wooden floor of the cell, but if you do it in the field, you'll just stomp in the mud and look silly, okay? But noises, okay, vocalizations can be good. A quick shout or a scream, although I have one source that says that's all very well for excitable races like Italians and Japanese, but doesn't suit the British temperament. So, but the most important thing that you do is prove your opponent by true play before deceiving them with false. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to make a series of real attacks first of all. So, for example, now I know how my opponent responds to that, okay? In this case, Dan does a little step back and turns to an inside guard, and that's how he deals with cut number one. And having made a couple of those real attacks, I now know how he responds, and I can formulate a feint that is going to work. And most importantly, I have primed him to respond. He thinks he knows what I'm doing. I'm throwing cut number ones, okay? And he is now primed to respond to my cue. Now, the next thing to do is to make the feint. So in this case, I'm going to do a 1-2. I'm going to feint to the inside and turn to the outside. The rules to follow here are this. First of all, don't make your feint so fast that he doesn't have time to respond. Okay, doing that isn't going to help because he doesn't have time to commit to the defense I want him to commit to. Okay, the fake attack must be slow enough and obviously enough that he sees it and goes, I've got this, leaving himself open for where my real attack is going to land. Second and most important rule, do not step into distance on the fake attack. Because this bit is fake, if he responds in an unexpected way, such as sticking his point out, and I've stepped in, I'm going to die, okay? I don't want to do that. My fake attack is made out of distance because I'm not 100% sure how he's going to respond. I think I know, I've got a plan, but it might be wrong, okay? So do not step into distance. Generally speaking, you don't step at all, though there are some instances in, say, Swetnam, in the rapier and quarterstaff, where he says, well, you can step as long as you're stepping towards the side where the real attack is eventually going to come. In terms of broadsword, that's really not necessary, so you don't move your feet at all. Now, the specifics of this particular feint. Okay? The second part of the first part needs to be slow and obvious, but the second part needs to be fast. Okay? So if I do this, it's going to be way too slow. Okay? I can't stop it, pull it all the way back and swing it around the other side, because he will make a second parry, and that will be easy. The second part has got to be fast. And this is kind of the technical bit that I was asked to address. Okay, so essentially what I want to do is turn around the point of rotation. So if I get my broadsword and I move it between inside and outside guard, you can see there's a point that it likes to turn about, okay? Up about there. That is the point at which I'm turning my sword around, okay? I'm extending into cut number 1 and then turning around that point into cut number 2. So that turn is really fast, okay? In fact, it doesn't take much longer than it does to make a simple committed attack, okay? Because it's just a turn of the wrist, okay? Which gives him very little time to respond. So from the top, real attack, priming him to make the second attack. And you'll notice that because I've turned around the point of rotation, my sword is now providing really good opposition against his sword should he try and make a second parry or whatever, or counter thrust at me or something unexpected. Okay? So it is. And notice that I'm not stepping forward until I make the real attack. Okay? So, things that you can do wrong. First of all, stepping forward on the fake attack. Bad. Only step forward on the real attack. Second things that you can do wrong, do the first bit so fast he doesn't have time to respond. Okay, you've got to convince him to respond to that. Third thing you can do wrong is to make your second part too slow by making the action too big. So going is going to be too slow. Going is going to be too slow. Okay? What you need to do is learn to turn your sword around that point of rotation, okay? So that it's essentially one line. You're just turning the wrist to turn the sword like so. And that way your feint, particularly this 1-2 with the broadsword, will be nice and fast. That'll do.